Hello and welcome to the second episode of Googolplex. This is your host, dʒε�bz, and today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on a magnetic character called Steve Jobs. And I didn't know Steve Jobs for a long time until the iPhone came out, and I was in Australia and. I saw the presentation. It was glamorous, and there wasn't any iPhones available. I was in Australia, so there wasn't any iPhones available, only in the US, and I had to sneak one out because some people were selling it, off the market. And I remember there was a guy in a car giving me the iPhone, and it was like sneaking. So sneaky getting this new gadget and playing with it, and showing everybody that I have this great piece of machinery. But I dived into the character of Steve Jobs, and looking at his life from the start of when he was associated with Atari and met Steve Wozniak. He seems to be an not understood character, especially when he is working in his company. He seems to be pushing people over the edge, and I saw many interviews of him, and I can't but emphasize that he was deeply driven, but also misunderstood even in the tech world. So, Steve Jobs was adopted, and his adopted parents told him later in life, after he graduated from high school, that he was adopted and there was another man, and that man, I think he was Arabian, and he came to search for his biological father, and he found out that he was cold and distant, which didn't add value much to the relationship between the two. I can only imagine when he met his father in the restaurant, and he was looking for this long-distance, even after he was successful in his company and he was making a lot of money, but he wanted to connect with also his biological sister. It just goes to show you how his life transpired after his second marriage. If you're looking at his personal life, you would find that because he was adopted, and he was adopted from great parents that actually gave him a lot of momentum to become the man that he was. But I think it shaped him in such a way that his biological parents didn't understand, his true value. So when he had a family of his own, he was quite distant from them as well. For example, Lisa, his daughter, always was complaining that Steve Jobs was distant from her. Even though such a great magnate of characters tried to make up things, like when he created the Lisa computer. He just fabricated like a name just to put the Lisa name in the lineup, which was really clever, but they found out, and I think it's just one of those things that makes you wonder if your existing life would impact your future life. I think also the time of him getting fired from his own company that he established. I think he was looking at in depth about creating something spectacular and pushing people over the edge, making them work as much harder than they ever did. But it just goes to show you that he was successful in other areas, such as Pixar and Next, and then he came back. To me, I didn't even know who this great magnitude of a character was before launching the iPhone. In these kind of episodes, I'll be talking about great personalities, such as Steve Jobs, Muhammad Ali. I used to talk about also like other characters as well that impacted our life today. From across the interviews that was published online, and you can see them across the web about Steve Jobs, you can understand that he was driven by passion and emotion. Yes, there's some element of logic into that, but mainly it was purely on the emotional side. For example, when he left all the material wealth and he went to India, and he wanted to understand nature or understand himself, he just found a book and a person who told him to read that book. I'm not going to tell you what's the name of the book because you have to find this out, because it's a really interesting book. I think he understood from that trip serenity and clarity of mind, because when you're stripped away from all material wealth, you begin to see the prospect of what life can be, and it was spectacular that many people go to distant places and to find their soul, per se, or find their true calling. Though his trip wasn't that successful, but he found the book and he was reading it per day, and he accelerated into creating such great magnitude of works. His love for art and fonts and many things that shaped how we communicate with each other nowadays. Because without the iPhone, there won't be an Android or any kind of product. Back then, it was only, I think, Nokia and Motorola. But I'm talking about a great character that I really think that he was misunderstood, especially in the tech world. I think they just thought of him as a somebody who pushes people over the edge, just wants some impossible tasks to be done, being on people's nerve. But look at the bright side and look at what this great character actually accomplished for all of us, I guess. It seems that so many people connect with Steve Jobs because every single one of us holds a perfectionist at heart. I mean, whether you are a perfectionist at your job or relationship or life in general, it just seems to me very, very. You can almost be connected to such a great character. It's not because he's one of those successful people that is known that is known publicly, but also that he is one of those people that you can connect on a personal level, if that makes any sense. Because there's so many successful people, but we feel alienated, distant from them. Like, there is nothing we can share from characters, especially in business or public figures. But these kind of people, especially Muhammad Ali, Steve Jobs, many people across business, we could connect with them on a personal level. For example, I think that if you're talking about Elon Musk, there is not much of a connection there. Maybe because he's pretty smart. I don't know. But it's just, I'm kidding, but it's just, you can't connect on a personal level. You can't say, okay, he shares some characteristics of mine, or, most of us share. Like, for example, somebody who's really fond of himself and who's really sure of himself, like Muhammad Ali. We, like all of us, I believe, we're just kids, and we have that, every single one of us have it. some high, some low, some hide it, some show it, but we do have that. And somebody who's really passionate, like Steve Jobs, we also connect with such characteristics on various levels, but pretty much the same. It seems to me that he was picking from Atari, and he was going after the biggest computer company at that time. It seems to me every place he went, he either learned something from it, or he actually impacted it in such a great way. And mainly that's not because the guy was really smart, but it's mainly because of his emotion and passion for learning, or maybe impact like he impacted his company Apple. I mean, his Matrix was beating the largest company in his genre, which is a computer company in the world. He actually managed to, well, he didn't achieve that, but he was pretty close. You can imagine, even in his late interviews, he was striving to do that. I think his driver wasn't later in his life. His driver wasn't money or wealth. He just wanted to perfect his matrix. You see, I believe so. Like, all of us have a matrix, and I remember the story of one guy being pushed out of a band, and his matrix was beating. I think the name of the band was Metallica, and he wanted to beat Metallica, and he created his own band. He was successful. He created millions of dollars, and later in one interview, they interviewed him, and they said, what do you feel about being thrown off of Metallica? The guy was super emotional, and he was a millionaire. Of course, ordinary people wouldn't understand, or like you and me. Like, this guy is a millionaire, and he's crying over being thrown out of a band like 20 years ago. I think because of his matrix was overcoming on the band he was thrown from. That is why it doesn't matter how many money this guy makes, as long as he just perfects his matrix. I mean, some people's matrix is pretty simple, and their matrix would be like having a peaceful life, and there's challenges to that as well. But if your matrix is beating the largest company in the world in terms of computer or personalized computer, well, IBM wasn't personalized computer back then, but your matrix is pretty challenging of itself. Just like Elon Musk's matrix is beating, being out of space in a horrible place. Competing with Virgin, and he's collaborating with NASA, but also competing with it. But yeah. It just goes to show you that it doesn't matter which matrix you pick. It's going to have challenges of its own. Even if you just wanted to live a solitude life, it would have a challenge of its own. I just remember an Italian car brand such as Ferrari. There was a guy called Lamborghini, and he was thrown from Ferrari, and. And this guy, this Lamborghini, he created a very extravagant car to just compete the owner of Ferrari. That was 80 years ago. And that guy perfected his matrix, because his matrix was beating the guy who threw him out of his company. And you do know that still both companies hold ground today, but which one would be more sexier, more great, more extravagant? It would be Lamborghini. Now this guy perfected his matrix, because his matrix was defeating Ferrari at its game, because the owner of Ferrari kicked him out at one time. I do think that having big goals, such as, for example, Steve Jobs was having a big goal to defeat IBM, would overshadow his personal life. So, for example, when he wasn't taking care of his daughter, or taking care of his family, like the tabloids were saying, it just goes to show you that he had a bigger goal that overshadowed everything in his life, even pushing people over the edge, pushing people over the edge in his company, which was Apple, and that just goes to show you that if you have a big goal, it would overshadow everything in your life, unless you're just unless it's a miracle, like it's a miracle that if somebody would be perfect at everything in his life. At the grand scheme of Steve Jobs' life, we would understand that he was driven by emotion, he was driven by passion. I think money wasn't a big issue for him. When he first started in life, yes, it was a really big issue, and he was even stealing money from Steve Wozniak. But I do think after 20 years of success, the prospect of money, the prospect of money wasn't the issue. The prospect of perfecting his matrix and achieving the goal that he wanted to achieve, which is beating Microsoft and IBM, was the focus of his life. And then he went on to tried to defeat telecommunication companies such as Nokia. He actually achieved great success in that. I think that's why Steve Jobs was pretty happy with the iPhone, because he can perfect his matrix. One of his biggest goals is defeating those companies. And that just goes to show you when Android came into the equation and Google, he was pretty upset about it, because he just called them that they were stealing his ideas, they were taking his ideas, because his matrix was challenged. I think that's why Steve Jobs created was collaborating with teams to create products such as Apple TV, the personalized computer, and then the iPhone. And one of his greatest joys is the iPhone and the iPad, because they perfected his matrix, which is defeating the already existing company of such genres, which is the smartphones. So at the end of this, so what if he pushes people over the edge? And so what if he wasn't perfect in every way in life? Look at his life, and look at what he transformed our lives to be nowadays, that we're using smartphones just like an ordinary thing, which was impossible back then. You can only use Nokia and baby kind of internet, and you can't be searching the web or doing anything with your phone. But nowadays it's just an ordinary thing. And I think his legacy, his life, transformed not just his life, also our lives as well. So this is my thoughts on Steve Jobs, and this is Googolplex by dʒεbz. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you in the next one.